Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, with a presentation looking at the prejudice against and intolerance of Native Americans and African Americans. It seems right to bring them together. The one group, the original occupiers of the land, the other brought forcibly to it, and neither treated as equals. Let's be clear, Native Americans and their culture faced an existential threat from the dominant white society. Once numbering around 1.5 million, their numbers had dropped to barely 250,000 by 1920. But to continue their traditional ways, they were forced to live on reservations in the Midwest. Then, during the 1920s, the authorities set out to destroy their traditional ways and culture. Whole tribes were forced to convert to Christianity, and traditions such as performing the sun dance, the most important Native American ceremony in which they tried to make contact with their spirits, were banned. So too was the wearing of traditional clothes, and boys having long hair. Their children were forced to attend boarding schools so as to weaken their parents' influence, and they were separated from children of their own tribe to further break down their ties. Children found speaking their own language in the schools were beaten. However, attitudes began to change when 12,000 Native Americans served in the armed forces in World War I, and a government survey in the 1920s showed that most Native Americans were living in poverty. I have an interesting exercise that you can do on this survey. That's the kind of thing we can do together in tutorials. Anyway, as a result of the survey, all Native Americans born in America were given full American citizenship by a law passed in 1924, and the Merriam Report of 1928 called for a comprehensive improvement in the way they were treated. Still, reforms were only finally introduced in 1934 as part of Roosevelt's New Deal. Things didn't radically improve for Native Americans, but the future looked a little brighter. And so we turned to African Americans. Though they had been freed from slavery in 1862, African Americans still faced prejudice everywhere and in every part of their lives. From personal abuse, verbal and physical, to structural racism, lower paid jobs, poor housing, and second-rate schools and medical care. And as a consequence, their life expectancy was lower than white Americans. And few were able to vote in reality. But though this treatment was seen everywhere, it was in the southern states where they had toiled as slaves in the cotton and tobacco plantations where they faced prejudice the most. Many states in the South had passed Jim Crow laws, so called after a song of 1830 that depicted African Americans as childlike and inferior. These laws were first introduced in the 19th century, and their aim was to assert white dominance over African Americans. They segregated African Americans, whether in hospitals, schools and libraries, or parks, swimming pools and public transport, even in cemeteries. Yet life for African Americans was even worse than that, at least in the southern states, where they faced the hatred of an organization of white supremacists that not only broke the law but totally ignored it. An organization that took the law into its own hands, the Ku Klux Klan. The Klan was determined to maintain white supremacy and keep African Americans in their place, a place outside of civilized society, a place without rights. Hence they denied African Americans the vote and access to a good education or to good jobs, and they targeted African Americans with beatings, whippings, lynchings and other murderous acts. A lynching was a hanging without a trial, totally illegal. They were fanatics, but for many, especially in small-town America, they did represent shared values, and they were seen as fighting to preserve everything that was decent in life. They acted outside of the law, and so secrecy was important to most members, though some were happy, even proud, to reveal their identity. They dressed in white robes and pointed hoods to strike fear, as well as conceal their identity. They held parades, both day and night, marching in their white sheets and hoods. At night they would carry flaming torches. In ceremonies they surrounded a burning cross, chanting. It was a demonstration of their power over African Americans, but also over wavering whites in their community. They bullied their neighbours into supporting them. There's more detail in my ebook on American society, but not here. It wouldn't be appropriate. But from 1910 onwards, many African Americans left the South and headed to the cities further north. This was the Great Migration. During World War I, more did so, attracted by the jobs in factories. But after the war, there was intense competition for those jobs, and many whites resented the black newcomers. African Americans were the first to be laid off and were pushed back into the lowest paid menial jobs, casual labouring or domestic service, and of course the poorest neighbourhoods too. In 1919, Chicago suffered race riots, as did some 24 cities around America. There is more detail in my ebooks, and as I said, I have specific exercises that we can do in tutorials to add detail to your work and improve your understanding. But for this presentation, I'm finished. Thank you so much for listening, and good luck with your studies. Get in touch with me at historymadeeasier@gmail.com if you fancy some tutorials, and we'll see if I can sort something out with your parents. Cheers.